Regimen Johnson had always been a man of curiosity, a trait that had led him down many strange paths in his life. But nothing could have prepared him for the day he stumbled upon the Bacon church in the middle of a vast, endless cornfield. The sun was setting, casting long shadows over the swaying stalks, and the air was thick with the scent of earth and something else, something greasy, smoky, and unsettlingly familiar. Regimen had been driving for hours, lost on backroads that seemed to twist and turn in on themselves. His GPS had long since given up, and his phone had no signal. Just as he was about to turn back, he saw it, a steeple rising above the corn, glistening in the fading light. As he drew closer, he realized with a mix of awe and revulsion that the entire structure was made of bacon. Thick, cured strips of it, layered like shingles, glistening with grease. The cross atop the steeple was a twisted, crispy curl of pork, and the doors, great, heavy slabs of bacon, swung open with a creak that sounded almost like a sizzle. "Welcome, traveler," a voice called out, high-pitched and raspy. Regimen froze. Standing in the doorway was a child, no older than 10, with pale, sickly skin and fiery red hair. The boy's eyes were sunken, his cheeks hollow, and his lips were stained with what looked like grease. Behind him, more children emerged, all gingers, all gaunt, all staring at Regimen with an intensity that made his skin crawl. "We are the Bacon congregation," the boy said, his voice echoing unnaturally in the still air. "And you have been chosen." "Chosen for what?" Regimen asked, his voice trembling despite his best efforts to sound brave. "To join us," the boy replied, a slow smile spreading across his face. "To become one with the Bacon church." Regimen took a step back, but the children moved faster than he could have imagined. They surrounded him, their small hands gripping his arms with surprising strength. He tried to pull away, but their grip was like iron, their fingers slick with grease. They led him into the church, and the smell of bacon grew overwhelming, almost suffocating. Inside, the walls were lined with more bacon, the pews were made of it, and the altar was a towering stack of sizzling strips. The air was hot, humid, and filled with the sound of crackling. Regimen's stomach churned, but the children seemed to revel in it, their eyes gleaming with a feverish light. "Kneel," the boy commanded, and Regimen found himself compelled to obey. His knees hit the bacon-covered floor, and he winced as the grease soaked through his pants. The children began to chant, their voices rising and falling in a strange, discordant rhythm. The air grew thicker, heavier, and Regimen felt a pressure building in his chest, as if something were trying to force its way inside him. "Please," he begged, his voice barely a whisper. "Let me go." The boy leaned in close, his breath hot and rancid. "There is no escape," he hissed. "The Bacon church demands a sacrifice." Regimen's vision blurred, and he felt himself being pulled forward, toward the altar. The bacon seemed to writhe and twist, as if alive, and he realized with horror that it was moving, reaching for him. He tried to scream, but no sound came out. The children's chanting grew louder, more frenzied, and the bacon closed in around him, wrapping him in its greasy embrace. The last thing Regimen saw before everything went black was the boy's face, grinning with a terrible, knowing smile. When he awoke, the church was gone. The cornfield stretched out around him, silent and still. But something was different. His skin felt greasy, his clothes reeked of bacon, and when he looked down at his hands, he saw that they were stained with the same reddish grease that had marked the children's lips. And in the distance, faint but unmistakable, he heard the sound of sizzling. Regimen ran, his heart pounding, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He didn't stop until he reached his car, and even then, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. As he drove away, he glanced in the rearview mirror and saw, just for a moment, the glint of a bacon steeple rising above the corn. He never spoke of what happened that night, but he could never bring himself to eat bacon again. And sometimes, in the dead of night, he would wake to the sound of sizzling, and the faint, distant chanting of children. The bacon church had claimed him, and he knew it would never let him go.